Helen Dalton, member for Murray, thanks for speaking with us on Flow.
Thank you, Ricky. Happy to be here.
Now, last time I spoke with you, we were talking about this floodplain harvesting and the regulation you were very concerned about. We talked about whether someone might disallow it in the Legislative Council. It looks like it's happened.
It did happen yesterday, so there are a lot of people in the Southern Connected System or down the Riverina or right across my electorate that were watching this on Parliament. So the upper house voted 21-15 to overturn the National Party law change to legalise floodplain harvesting. So this was a great win for farmers and communities across the state.
Yeah, and the disallowance, just outline again why you were unhappy with that particular disallowance? Why you were unhappy with that regulation?
The regulations, there were three put in place, and they were tabled or put in or gazetted last Friday, and it doesn't give people an opportunity to really debate that. It becomes law straight away, and it really would have allowed farmers to continue to capture rainwater and divert it into their private dams. And this is in the north. This impacts on communities, particularly downstream on the Darling, and where we're trying to look after the environment, critical human needs, and also Indigenous water needs. So we need a fair and equitable distribution of the resource.
Yeah, so the regulation would have allowed, as you say, the capturing of rainfall, but wasn't it really going to apply most significantly in that northern basin up in the upper reaches of the Darling?
Absolutely, yes. That's where it was. It wouldn't have made any difference to the south because floodplain harvesting really is not an issue in the south, but where you deliberately divert floodplain or water into a storage, then that's the problem.
Yeah, now I'll use Cubby Station as an example. I know they'll cry blue murder about being touted as an example again, but I've been there myself, and they've got these massive levee banks that are used across the floodplain to hold the floodwaters back when the flooding occurs, and I think there were other properties where that was going on, and they would claim that they were roads or something like that, not actually levee banks. But that's partly what this disallowance motion was about, was stopping that sort of diversion of water.
That's right, yes. And basically what we want the Water Minister, Melinda Pavey, to do is to really sit down with all stakeholders, not just a few in the north, because they've excluded some stakeholders in the south, sit down around the table and discuss what needs to be done. And she has, in the 2 years she's been Water Minister, has been very reluctant to do that. And I think yesterday's vote was a real vote for democracy, where we're saying, no, you can't put in a sneaky regulation and make it law without doing the correct process. Yep. Now, the government itself has really only got themselves to blame because they've had 10 years to legalise floodplain harvesting, and they've been given hundreds of millions of dollars from the feds to do this, and they basically kicked the can down the road. So people want some certainty. They want to know what the rules are, and they want the government to actually provide some leadership. And that really takes in the consulting of, or the consultation, genuine consultation of all stakeholders, not just a select few in the north, but all stakeholders that are impacted by this.
Yeah, you could say the disallowance was a watershed moment, I guess, but it does seem to have the New South Wales Irrigators Council and the government in conniptions. They seem to be thinking or claiming that what the disallowance did was the reverse of what it was trying to achieve. But is that just spin from their end about what the regulation was actually about?
Look, I believe it's spin because I think the government is doing everything, it seems, backwards. So what we should be looking at is our downstream targets, that people do, all the water needs are met downstream, particularly on the Darling. And as I said, the environment, Indigenous needs, critical human needs, before anyone takes any water. Now, the big problem is we don't know what the water take is because these meters, this is the money they've been given to do the metering, hasn't been done yet. So they can talk about, oh yes, we're working on that, we're reducing this and reducing that. But they don't really know what it is that how much water, because it's not metered. And that's the first step that needs to be done before we can do anything. We need to know what that resource is. And of course, when all those downstream targets are met, then yes, people would be able to, if they had a licence, be able to utilise that licence and pump in the excess water. And that would be a fair thing to do.
Yeah, we've been looking at the communiques that have come out of the Basin Authority and the recent Ministerial Council meeting that was published late yesterday, and it does seem that New South Wales have gone back to the drawing board with some of their water allocation plans, and there's some nervousness within the Basin states about just whether they've actually done their work or whether they've got the transparency necessary to reach their targets under the Basin Plan.
Look, it almost seems like they haven't said it out loud, but they've ignored some of the deadlines. It's almost like they've bowed out of the Basin Plan just by not doing the work that they should have done. And, I mean, there are targets that they need to be met, and one of these things is the metering and monitoring.
Yeah.
And that's been an ongoing thing. Before they came into government, the Labor government kicked the can down the road too. So it's really been 20 years for them to think about what they need to do.
Yeah.
And it's time that they did that. And I did meet with the Water Minister yesterday, and I did say that as a sign of good faith that she actually embargoes floodplain harvesting until the meters are done. Yeah. And I think you'd find that most of the storages are full anyway now. They've had a big rain event up there. And it would be only fair and reasonable that subsequent rain that falls is allowed to make its way to the Darling River, and that would certainly, I think, pick up the speed of the government wanting to put these meters in.
Now, back on the Basin Plan and these targets, if they're not reached, then buyback is activated. Could it be that the Southern Basin, people in your electorate, end up paying the price literally by losing or selling water allocations when it's the Northern Basin where things haven't been put in order? Well,
basically, I think the issue is that if South Australia doesn't get the Darling commitment, I think it's 39%. They're supposed to provide to the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, then what they do is take it off general security allocated or general security irrigators along the Murray and some in the Murrumbidgee too, I believe. So that's why the Murray irrigators have been on 2 years. They had 2 years of zero allocation when really the Murray River was running a banker, and that was to provide the needs. The South Australian commitment, not South Australia, the Darling commitment to South Australia.
Yeah, it's a bit of a case of robbing Peter to pay Paul, or robbing the Southern Basin to pay for the shortcomings in the Northern Basin.
That's right, and I think we need to look at some of the laws with the plan and make the adjustments that are needed. I think that there's got to be some fine tuning. They do talk about adaptive management, and some of these numbers that they've plucked out of the air are not right.
Yep.
And it's about, really, the Basin Plan should be about outcomes, not a number, and the environmental outcomes that we need, and the outcomes for community and for irrigators as well.
Yeah, well, Helen, I know from experience when you've got a disallowance that gets up, suddenly you do have the attention of the Minister. So for whatever role you've played in that, congratulations, and we'll see how you progress from here.
No, thank you. We worked really hard to explain the situation to those city MPs that don't understand what's going on, because, the water world is very, very hard to sometimes get your head around. So we did a lot of talking, and in the end, I think common sense prevailed.